The rain fell hard on Seoul that night, and Park Junho was counting the minutes until his shift ended at the small convenience store on the corner of a quiet street. He had worked there for 3 years now, ever since he left his job as a paramedic, and the nights were always long and lonely. He heard the crash first, then a strange cry that did not sound human at all. Junho grabbed the flashlight from under the counter and walked to the back door. His heart was beating fast, but he had learned long ago that ignoring strange sounds in the night only led to regret later. The alley behind the store was dark and wet, and the rain made it hard to see anything clearly. But then his flashlight found her, and Junho stopped breathing for a moment. She was not human. Her skin was pale blue, almost silver in the dim light, and her hair was white like fresh snow. She wore robes that looked expensive, but were now torn and covered in something dark blood, he realized, though it was purple instead of red. The alien woman looked up at him with golden eyes filled with fear and pain, and she tried to crawl away, but her body was too weak. She collapsed against the wet ground and made a small sound of despair. Junho knew about aliens. Everyone did since first contact happened 5 years ago, but he had never seen one this close, and certainly never one that looked so terrified and hurt. He should call someone. He should contact the authorities or the United Nations First Contact Center. That was what all the guidelines said to do when encountering an extraterrestrial being. But then he heard voices at the end of the alley, speaking in a harsh language he did not understand, and he saw shadows moving with purpose. They were searching for something, and Junho knew in his gut that they were searching for her. The alien woman grabbed his ankle with surprising strength, and when he looked down at her, she spoke one word in broken English that changed everything. "Please." That single word hit Junho like a punch to the chest. He remembered another voice saying that same word years ago, a voice he could not save no matter how hard he tried. He made his decision in less than a second. Junho bent down and lifted the alien woman into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, and she did not fight him at all. Instead, she pressed her face against his shoulder and trembled like a frightened child. He carried her through the back door and into the storage room of the convenience store. There were boxes everywhere, and he quickly arranged them to create a hiding space in the corner. He set her down gently and put his finger to his lips. "Stay quiet," he whispered, hoping she understood. The front door of the store opened with a chime, and Junho's blood went cold. He walked out of the storage room and closed the door behind him, trying to keep his face calm and normal. 2 aliens stood in his store, and they were nothing like the wounded woman in the back. These were tall and muscular, with gray skin and eyes that held no warmth at all. They wore armor that looked military, and they carried weapons that hummed with energy. One of them spoke in accented English that was rough and unpleasant to hear. "Human. We search for a criminal who escaped our custody. She is dangerous and may have come this way. Have you seen anything unusual tonight?" Junho felt sweat forming on his forehead, but he had spent years as a paramedic learning to stay calm in crisis situations. He shrugged and gestured at the rain outside. "Nobody comes out in weather like this. I've been alone all night, and the only unusual thing is you two standing in my store, asking strange questions." The alien stared at him for a long moment, and Junho was certain the creature could hear his heart pounding. But then the second alien said something in their harsh language, and they both turned and left without another word. Junho waited until he could no longer see them through the window before he let out the breath he had been holding. His hands were shaking now, and he had to lean against the counter for support. What had he just done? He had lied to alien soldiers to protect a stranger he knew nothing about. She could be a criminal like they said. She could be dangerous. She could bring terrible consequences down on his head. But when he opened the storage room door and saw her huddled in the corner, shaking and bleeding and looking at him with those golden eyes full of desperate hope, He knew he would make the same choice again. Junho knelt beside her and examined her wounds with the trained eye of a former medical professional. The cuts were deep but not fatal, and the purple blood was already starting to clot. She needed proper treatment, but he could not take her to a hospital without answering questions he could not answer. "I am going to help you," he said slowly, hoping she understood. "But I need to take you somewhere safe first." "Can you walk?" She tried to stand and nearly fell, but Junho caught her and held her steady. She looked at him with confusion in her golden eyes, as if she could not understand why he was helping her. "Why?" she asked in that broken English. "Why help me when you do not know who I am?" Junho thought about that question for a moment, and then he gave her the only honest answer he had. "Because you needed help, and I was here. That is enough reason for me." He wrapped his jacket around her shoulders to hide her alien features and led her out the back door into the rainy night. His small apartment was only 3 blocks away, and he prayed they could make it there without being seen. The rain continued to fall, washing away the purple blood in the alley and hiding their footsteps as they disappeared into the darkness of the soul night. Junho's apartment was small and simple, just 2 rooms with old furniture and walls that needed painting. But it was warm and dry, and right now that was all that mattered. He helped the alien woman sit on his worn couch and went to get his old medical kit from the bathroom. He had kept it even after leaving his paramedic job, and tonight he was grateful for that decision. When he returned, she was looking around his apartment with curiosity in her golden eyes. She seemed fascinated by the simple things: the photographs on the wall, the small television, the plants on the windowsill that he always forgot to water. "This is your home?" she asked in her broken English. "Yes," Junho replied as he opened the medical kit. "It is not much, but it is mine. Now please, let me see your wounds." She hesitated for a moment, then slowly removed the torn outer layer of her robes. The cuts on her arms and side were worse than he had thought, deep and jagged as if made by something sharp and cruel. Junho worked in silence, cleaning the wounds and applying bandages. Her blood was purple and her skin felt cool to the touch, but the basic principles of medicine seemed to apply. Stop the bleeding, prevent infection, reduce pain. "My name is Valeth Sorn," she said suddenly, and her voice was stronger now. "I owe you my life, human, and I do not even know what to call you." "Park Junho," he replied without looking up from his work. "But you can just call me Junho." "Everyone does." "Junho," she repeated, and the way she said his name made it sound almost musical. "Why did you help me when those soldiers told you I was a criminal?" He finished bandaging her last wound and sat back on his heels to look at her properly. She was beautiful in a strange and otherworldly way, but more than that, she looked exhausted and afraid and alone. "Are you a criminal?" he asked simply. Valeth shook her head slowly, and something like anger flickered in her golden eyes. "I am not a criminal. I am a prisoner who escaped from people who want to use me for their own purposes. They took me from my ship and kept me locked away, and tonight I finally found a chance to run." "Who are they?" Junho asked. "Why do they want you so badly?" She looked away, and he could see her deciding how much to tell him. Finally, she spoke, but her words were careful and measured. "There are those in the galaxy who believe that certain species are superior to others. They think humans and others like you should be controlled or eliminated. I disagreed with them, and they decided I was a problem that needed to be removed." Junho felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard rumors about factions in the Galactic Council who viewed humanity as primitive and dangerous. But hearing it confirmed by an alien who had been kidnapped for opposing them made it terrifyingly real. "You must be someone important," he said quietly. For them to go to such trouble, Valeth did not answer that question. Instead, she looked at the photograph on his wall, the one showing a younger Junho with his arm around a smiling young woman. "Who is she?" Valeth asked. Junho's heart tightened the way it always did when he looked at that photograph. "My sister, Junyoung. She died 6 years ago." "How did she die?" He was quiet for a long moment, and the memories came flooding back like they always did. The late-night phone call, the rush to the hospital, arriving too late to do anything but hold her hand as she slipped away. She was attacked by someone who wanted to hurt her. I was a paramedic then, trained to save lives, but I could not save hers. I was too late. Valeth reached out and touched his hand gently, and her cool fingers were surprisingly comforting. "That is why you helped me," she said softly. "You could not save her, but you could save me." Junho did not deny it. She had seen through him more clearly than anyone had in years. "I could not let another person die if I had the power to help," he admitted. Even a stranger, even an alien from another world. Before Valeth could respond, they both heard sounds from outside. Footsteps on the stairs, voices speaking that harsh alien language, doors being forced open in the apartments below. The hunters had found his building. Junho moved quickly. He helped Valeth into the small closet in his bedroom and covered her with blankets and old clothes. "Stay here and do not make a sound," he whispered. "I will lead them away." "No." She grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "They will hurt you. You do not know what they are capable of." He gently removed her hand and gave her a small smile that did not reach his eyes. "Maybe not, but I know what I am capable of. I will come back. I promise." Junho left his apartment and walked down the stairs just as 2 alien soldiers reached his floor. He pretended to be a confused resident awakened by the noise. "What is happening?" he demanded loudly. "Why are you breaking into people's homes in the middle of the night?" The soldiers grabbed him roughly and demanded to know if he had seen the fugitive. Junho played his role perfectly, acting frightened and confused and ultimately unhelpful. They searched his apartment but did not find the closet where Valeth was hidden. The old building had strange architecture, and the closet looked like part of the wall if you did not know it was there. Finally, the soldiers left, but not before one of them struck Junho across the face for wasting their time. He fell to the floor and tasted blood, but he did not cry out or show weakness. When the building was quiet again, he limped back to his apartment and opened the closet door. Valeth was there, tears streaming down her blue cheeks. "You are hurt," she whispered, reaching for his bruised face. "I will be fine," he said, managing a weak smile. "And more importantly, you are safe. That is all that matters." She looked at him with wonder in her golden eyes, as if she had never encountered anything like him before. "I have met many beings across the galaxy," she said quietly, "but I have never met anyone like you, Park Junho. Your people are more remarkable than any species gives them credit for." Junho did not know how to respond to that, so he simply offered her his hand and helped her out of the closet. "Come," he said. "You should rest, and I need to clean this blood off my face before it stains my shirt. Tomorrow we will figure out what to do next." Outside, the rain had finally stopped, and the first hints of dawn were beginning to lighten the sky over Seoul. The morning sun streamed through the thin curtains of Junho's apartment, and he woke to find Valeth sitting on the floor near the window, staring at the sky with an expression he could not read. His face hurt from where the soldier had struck him, and he could feel the bruise spreading across his cheek. But he had survived worse during his years as a paramedic, and physical pain was something he knew how to handle. "Did you sleep at all?" he asked as he sat up from the small mattress he had laid on the floor. He had given Valeth his bed, which she had accepted only after much argument. "A little," she replied without turning from the window. "I kept thinking about what you did for me, and I realized that I have not been honest with you." Junho felt his stomach tighten with worry. He had known there was more to her story than she had told him, And now it seemed he would finally learn the truth. "Before you tell me anything," he said carefully, "let me make us some breakfast. Whatever you need to say will be easier on a full stomach." He went to his tiny kitchen and prepared a simple meal of rice and vegetables and eggs. It was nothing fancy, but it was warm and filling, and Valith ate with genuine appreciation. "This is delicious," she said between bites. "I have eaten at the finest establishments across 100 worlds, but nothing has tasted as good as this simple meal in your small apartment." Junho smiled at that, but his curiosity would not let him stay silent for long. "You said you wanted to tell me the truth. I am ready to listen whenever you are ready to speak." Valith set down her bowl and took a deep breath. Her golden eyes met his, and he could see fear and hope and determination all mixed together. "I need to show you something first," she said. "May I turn on your viewing device?" Junho handed her the remote for his old television, and she quickly found a news channel that was broadcasting emergency coverage. The image showed dozens of massive alien ships hovering in orbit around Earth, and the Neus woman looked pale and frightened as she reported, "The Galactic Council fleet arrived in Earth orbit 3 hours ago in what officials are calling an unprecedented diplomatic crisis. The Supreme Arbiter of the Galactic Council, the highest authority in known space, has been reported missing, and accusations are flying between various factions about who might be responsible." Junho watched the broadcast with growing confusion. What did this have to do with Valith and her situation? Then the news showed an image of the missing Supreme Arbiter, and Junho's heart nearly stopped beating. The face on the screen was the same face that was sitting across from him in his tiny apartment. The same blue skin, the same silver-white hair, the same golden eyes that were now watching him with nervous anticipation. "That is you," he whispered, unable to find his voice properly. "You are the Supreme Arbiter. You are the leader of the entire Galactic Council." Valith nodded slowly, and her eyes were filled with something that might have been shame. "I am sorry I did not tell you sooner. I was afraid that if you knew who I really was, you would treat me differently. I wanted just one night where I was simply Valith, a person who needed help, not the Supreme Arbiter who carries the weight of 1,000 worlds." Junho sat back and tried to process what he was hearing. He had saved the life of the most powerful being in the known galaxy, and he had done it by hiding her in a closet and feeding her eggs and rice. "Why did they take you?" he asked when he could finally speak again. "Who would dare to kidnap the Supreme Arbiter?" Valith's expression hardened with anger as she explained. "There is a faction within the council called the Purists. They believe that only the original founding species deserve full membership, and that all others, especially humans, should be classified as primitives and denied rights. I have opposed them for years, and they finally decided to remove me from power. They plan to replace you with someone who would do what they wanted." Junho realized. "Yes," Valith confirmed. "They were going to announce that I had died in an accident and then install one of their own as the new arbiter. With me gone, there would be no one to stop them from declaring humanity a threat and ordering your planet quarantined or worse." The weight of what she was saying pressed down on Junho like a physical force. If Valith had died last night, if he had not found her in that alley, the entire future of humanity could have been changed forever. "What do we do now?" he asked. "How do we stop them?" Valith pulled out a small device from a hidden pocket in her robes. It looked like a communication device of some kind, more advanced than anything Junho had ever seen. "I have allies within the council who remained loyal to me. I was too weak to contact them last night, but now I have enough strength. With one message, I can summon ships to extract me and arrest the conspirators." She activated the device and spoke rapidly in a language Junho did not understand. Within minutes, she received a response that made her smile for the first time since he had met her. "It is done," she said with relief in her voice. "My people will be here within the hour. The purists will not escape justice this time. Junho should have felt relieved, but instead he felt strangely sad. Valith would return to her life among the stars, and he would go back to working the night shift at his convenience store. Their paths would never cross again. But Valith seemed to sense his thoughts, and she reached out to take his hand in hers. Junho, I want you to come with me to the council station. I want the entire galaxy to meet the human who saved my life with nothing but kindness and courage. He started to refuse, to say that he was nobody important and had no place among galactic leaders. But Valith stopped him with a gentle squeeze of his hand. Please, she said, using that same word that had changed everything the night before. You showed me what humanity truly is. Now help me show the rest of the galaxy. And just like before, Junho found that he could not refuse her. The shuttle ride to the orbital station was the most terrifying and wonderful experience of Junho's life. He watched through the window as Earth grew smaller beneath him. A beautiful blue and green sphere wrapped in white clouds. And he wondered if he would ever see it the same way again. Valith sat beside him, now dressed in fresh robes that had been brought by her loyal guards. She looked every bit the Supreme Arbiter, powerful and regal and commanding. But when she caught him staring, she gave him a small smile that reminded him of the frightened woman he had found in the alley. Are you nervous? She asked. I am terrified, he admitted honestly. I am a convenience store worker from Seoul, and in a few minutes I will stand before the leaders of 1,000 worlds. How could I not be nervous? Valith nodded with understanding in her golden eyes. When I first became Arbiter, I felt the same way. I was young and uncertain, and I thought everyone could see how afraid I was. But then an old mentor told me something I have never forgotten. What did they tell you? They said that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is being afraid and doing what must be done anyway. You have already shown more courage than most beings in the galaxy ever will, Junho. The shuttle docked with the council station, and Junho stepped into a world he had never imagined. The station was enormous, filled with alien species of every shape and size, all moving with purpose through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Guards in gleaming armor escorted them through the crowds, and Junho noticed that every alien they passed stopped to stare. Whether they were looking at the returned Arbiter or the strange human walking beside her, he could not tell. Finally, they reached the grand chamber, and Junho had to stop himself from gasping out loud. The room was vast beyond comprehension, with thousands of seats arranged in a great circle around the central platform. Every seat was filled with delegates from across the galaxy, and all of them turned to look as Valith entered. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some delegates cheered while others shouted in anger. Accusations flew back and forth in dozens of languages, and it took several minutes for order to be restored. Valith walked to the central platform with the calm confidence of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. But Junho noticed that she kept him close, positioning him just behind her, as if she wanted him within reach. Members of the Galactic Council. Valith's voice rang out clear and strong. I stand before you alive and well, despite the efforts of those who wished otherwise. I was abducted and held prisoner by members of the Purist faction who intended to kill me and seize control of this council. The chamber exploded in noise again, but one voice cut through the chaos. A tall alien with gray skin and cold eyes stepped forward, and Junho recognized him as one of the species that had searched his store. These are lies and fabrications, the alien declared. The Arbiter was not abducted. She abandoned her post and fled to the primitive human world. She has clearly been compromised by contact with that inferior species. Several delegates murmured in agreement, and Junho felt anger building in his chest. How dare they call humanity inferior when they knew nothing about his people? Valith raised her hand for silence, and the chamber slowly quieted. I was rescued by a human, she said calmly. A single human who risked his life to save a stranger he had never met. He did not know who I was. He did not ask for reward or recognition. He simply saw someone in need and chose to help. She turned and gestured for Junho to step forward. His legs felt weak and his heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst. But he forced himself to walk to the platform and stand beside the Supreme Arbiter. "This is Park Junho of Earth," Valeth announced. "And I ask him now to tell you what happened in his own words." Junho looked out at the thousands of alien faces watching him, and for a moment he could not speak. But then he remembered why he was here, and he found his voice. "I found her in an alley behind my store," he began simply. "She was hurt and scared, and there were soldiers hunting her. They told me she was a criminal and asked if I had seen her. And yet you lied to protect her." The gray-skinned alien interrupted. "You helped a fugitive escape. This only proves that humans cannot be trusted. I lied because she asked me for help," Junho replied, and his voice grew stronger with each word. "I did not know she was the Supreme Arbiter. I did not know anything about galactic politics or council factions. I only knew that there was a wounded person who needed protection, and I could either help her or turn away." "You could have been killed," another delegate called out. "Why would you risk your life for someone you did not even know?" Junho thought about that question, and he thought about his sister and all the people he could not save during his years as a paramedic. And then he gave the only answer that felt true, because that is what humans do. We see suffering and we try to stop it. We see fear and we try to comfort it. We see injustice and we try to fight it. Not because we expect reward, but because it is right. The gray-skinned alien laughed coldly. Pretty words from a primitive. "Tell me, human, would you have helped her if you knew it would mean your death? Would you truly sacrifice your life for a stranger?" The chamber fell silent, and every eye was fixed on Junho. This was the moment that would determine everything, and he knew it. He took a deep breath and spoke from his heart. "When I hid her in my store, I knew those soldiers might kill me if they found out. When I led them away from my apartment, I knew they might never let me return. I did not help her because I thought I would survive. I helped her because I could not live with myself if I did not try." The silence stretched for a long moment. And then Valeth stepped forward with tears glistening in her golden eyes. "This is humanity," she declared to the council. "This is what your purest ideology would have you destroy. Not a threat to be contained, but an example to be followed." The chamber erupted once more, but this time the tone had changed. More voices were raised in support than in opposition. And Junho saw delegates from dozens of species, nodding with respect and admiration. The gray-skinned alien and his allies tried to regain control, but they were shouted down by the growing chorus of voices calling for justice. The vote took less than an hour. The evidence against the purist faction was overwhelming, and with the Supreme Arbiter herself standing as witness, there was no way for them to escape justice. Junho watched as the gray-skinned alien and his allies were led away in restraints, their faces twisted with fury and disbelief. They had been so certain of their superiority, so convinced that no one could stop them. And now their dreams of domination were crumbling into dust. "It is done," Valeth said quietly as she came to stand beside him. "The purists will face trial for their crimes, and their influence in the council is broken. It will take years for them to recover. If they ever do, what happens now?" Junho asked. His head was spinning from everything that had happened, and he still could not quite believe that he was standing on a space station orbiting his own planet. Valeth smiled and took his hand in hers. "Now we move forward. But first, there is one more matter that must be addressed." She led him back to the central platform, and once again the Grand Chamber fell silent. Thousands of delegates watched as the Supreme Arbiter raised her voice to make a historic announcement. For too long, humanity has been viewed as a primitive species. unworthy of full participation in galactic society. They have been watched and studied and judged, but never truly seen for what they are. She paused and looked at Junho with warmth and gratitude in her golden eyes. One human showed me more about his species in one night than a century of observation could reveal. He demonstrated courage without expectation of survival, compassion without hope of reward, and moral strength that puts many so-called advanced species to shame. The chamber was completely silent now, every being hanging on her words. Therefore, I propose that Earth be granted full protected membership in the Galactic Council, not as primitives to be monitored, but as partners to be respected. Their voice shall be heard in these chambers. Their rights shall be protected under galactic law, and any who threaten them shall answer to the full power of this council. The vote was called, and Junho held his breath as delegate after delegate registered their support. When the final tally was announced, the result was clear. Earth had been accepted into the galactic community by an overwhelming majority. Junho felt tears streaming down his face, though he did not remember when they had started. Everything he had ever known, everything his species had ever dreamed about, had just changed forever, and it had started with a wounded stranger in a rainy alley. The celebrations continued for hours. But eventually, Valeth led Junho away from the crowds to a quiet observation deck overlooking Earth. The planet hung in the darkness of space like a jewel of blue and white, and Junho could not take his eyes off of it. "It is beautiful," Valeth said softly. "I understand now why your people fight so hard to protect it. It is our home," Junho replied. "The only one we have ever known. Everything we are comes from that little world." They stood in comfortable silence for a long moment, and then Valeth turned to face him with a serious expression. "Junho, I want to reward you for what you have done. You saved my life and changed the course of galactic history. Name anything you desire, and if it is within my power, I will give it to you." Junho thought about all the things he could ask for. Wealth beyond imagination, technology that would make him the most powerful human alive, a position of prestige and influence in the new galactic order. Any of these could be his with a single word. But as he looked at his planet floating in the endless dark, he realized that he did not want any of those things. What he wanted was something far simpler and far more precious. "I do not want wealth or power," he said quietly. "I just want you to remember us. Remember that we are worth protecting. Remember that when you see a human, you are seeing someone who would risk everything to help a stranger in need." Valeth's eyes filled with tears, and she reached out to embrace him. It was an awkward hug, human and alien bodies not quite fitting together properly. But it was warm and genuine and filled with emotion. "The galaxy will never forget what you taught me about your kind," she whispered. "I will make sure of that. And whenever anyone questions humanity's worth, I will tell them the story of Park Junho, the convenience store worker who saved the Supreme Arbiter with nothing but courage and kindness." Junho smiled and pulled back from the embrace. "That is all I could ever ask for." The shuttle ride back to Earth felt shorter than the trip up had been. Junho watched through the window as the council station grew smaller behind him, and he wondered if he would ever see it again. Valeth had given him a communication device that would allow them to stay in contact, and she had promised to visit whenever her duties allowed. But Junho knew that the Supreme Arbiter had a galaxy to lead, and he would not ask her to neglect that responsibility. When the shuttle landed in Seoul, the sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Junho stepped out onto familiar ground and took a deep breath of Earth air. He was home. The walk back to his apartment was quiet and peaceful. People passed him on the street without knowing what he had done or where he had been. To them, he was just another face in the crowd, another unremarkable person going about his unremarkable life. Junho smiled at that thought. Perhaps that was exactly as it should be. He stopped at the convenience store where he worked and looked at the alley where everything had begun. The rain had washed away all traces of that night, and there was nothing to show that history had been made in this ordinary place. The next morning, Junho returned to work. His manager did not ask where he had been, and his coworkers did not notice anything different about him. He restocked shelves and worked the register and counted the minutes until his shift ended. Just like always, but sometimes, when the store was quiet and the night was dark, Junho would look up at the stars and smile, because he knew something that no one else on that busy Soul Street could possibly know. He knew that somewhere out there, among those countless points of light, the most powerful being in the galaxy remembered his name. And he knew that because of one rainy night and one simple act of kindness, humanity had taken its first step toward a future among the stars, and that was more than enough reward for Park Junho.